life ain't a ding-dong. If I could take you up in boom, 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 tell me I'm the only one that you know. Life could be a dream, sweetheart.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Steve Starski Show. Today, we have an amazing guest, Kirk Nugent, inspirational speaker, amazing spoken word artist, and just overall Renaissance man.
Indeed.
Good friend of ours, and we're happy to have him on the show today. So please welcome Kirk Nugent.
I feel welcome. Thank you, Steve.
You are.
How are you? Stars? Good to see you, man.
Good to see you.
Always.
My man. So today's subject is going to be childhood unhealed trauma. We're going to dive real deep into this thing because we like to definitely discuss things that'll improve ourselves as people as we get older. We should learn more, learn from each other, always self-analyze, and do a better job at things as we get old, as we move ahead in this game.
Yeah.
So Kirk, kick it off, man. Unhealed childhood trauma.
Well, the reason this became important to me, Steve, is that I'm always analyzing myself. I'm looking at my relationship. I'm just in life in general. If something is working, I'm looking at why it works, and if it's not working, I'm looking at why it doesn't work. So areas of my life were going really, really well, but when I look at my relationships, they just didn't end it the way that I wanted them to end it. And I realized that something my mom said in passing when I was 15 years old affected the way that I dealt with women for the next 25 years. And I had no idea that it was affecting me. So I saw my mom as this ideal woman. She went to church every Sunday, Christian woman. But at the time, she was experiencing a divorce with my dad. And for lack of a better word, she was bitter. And she had her own unhealed trauma from what she experienced with my dad and what she also experienced with her dad. So my sister was 19 years old, and she's getting dressed for a date, and she confided in my mom that I don't really like going out on these dates. These guys that I meet, they're like idiots. And my mom said to her, not realizing I was in the room, men, you have to use men for what you can from them. And just like that, it took her less than 10 seconds to say the words, but for the next 25 years, I came out with relationship, nobody's going to use me. So no matter how much that woman was loving and benevolent and everything that I'm looking for a woman, I could not see her because in my mind, I have to protect my heart.
Right.
And until, Carl Jung, we were speaking about that before, Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will run your life and you'll think it's fate or destiny. And the unconscious thing that was running my life was I came out here with a heart that was completely closed and woman that I was emotionally unavailable to. So because of that, that ran my life, and I thought, man, my relationships, they don't work. I don't know what else to do or how to make it work. But once I started looking at that okay, here's what I'm bringing to the table, it allowed me to have better relationships and at least even be more aware of where my blind spots are.
Yo, that's deep.
I tend to be.
That is, I'm just thinking about what you're saying, and it's amazing how just that one instance, that one little ripple, if you will, cast such a large wave in your life.
Absolutely.
And there's just so many things that, like, I know there's things I go through, I've been through, that we don't give it the just due it deserves. We gloss over it. I always say that everything has everything to do with everything. Everything's connected. And it's amazing to me where me and Kirk are West Indian, so like I always say, oh, what are you talking about that for? That was a long time ago. Like, why are we talking? Nah, dude, that was a base for something that's the root, that's the foundation, the fertile soil that this nonsense is growing out of that you are totally ignoring. You know what I mean? And I think just the lack of awareness, is always a problem.
Yeah. I remember when I was going through a divorce.
Ooh.
It was a moment where I had made the unconscious conscious. So I was always aware growing up, and when I became an adult and got married and whatnot, I was always aware that my father was a very charismatic man, right? Very hospitable man, Southern gentleman, and But in my parents' marriage, my mother suffered a lot of anxiety and distress because my father was an alcoholic. And the things how that played out with finances, how that played out with his, emotional and psychological balance and whatnot, all that. So I saw my mom struggle, and I always knew that I did not want to be my father. I did not realize until after I'm getting a divorce that unconsciously I had decided I was not going to be my mother. So I was not going to suffer from someone else, but that was not, I was not conscious of that at all.
Whoa.
Until this is ending and I'm realizing why it's ending.
Right.
Because I made this decision and I am, how Carl Jung say it?
Until you make the unconscious conscious,
Right.
it will run your life and
Right.
you'll think it's fate or destiny.
Right. So this is all playing out and I'm thinking it's just happening, not realizing, no, I made an unconscious decision years and years ago that I was never aware of.
Right.
And now it's all playing out. You know what I mean? And not that that means that the relation, my marriage didn't break up because of my wife. You know what I mean? That's not what was going on. But this was at play all the while, and I wasn't aware that it was at play. I was only aware I'm not going to put you through the suffering that I saw my mom go through.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
It's amazing how many things that happen in our childhood that meanders through our lives, and we're unaware of. Even the way that we seek love has a lot to do with how we first experience love or the lack thereof. Because if you come from a family where love is never expressed but it's understood because we fed you, then the way that you express love later in life has a lot to do with it. I remember when I first came to the United States years ago, I heard Dr. Phil said, if there's something that keeps occurring in your life, no matter how painful it is, there's emotional payoff for it. And the first time I heard that, I'm like, nah, that can't possibly be true. But when I thought about it, I grew up in Jamaica. At age 4, I was diagnosed with sickle cell anemia. Between, and these years, pay attention for a second because they're going to make sense later. Between the age of 4 and 12, I had a sickle cell crisis every year or twice a year. Sometimes I would miss 2-3 months out of school. Between 12 and 15, absolutely no crisis. Between 15 and 18, none. At 19, I had a crisis again. Now, let's look at the emotional payoff, right? I came from a family that was very dysfunctional, to say the least. I mean, my dad really brought a lot of trauma into the house. My mom suffered a lot, and that emotional abuse from my dad kind of trickled down to everybody else. My mom had her own unhealed trauma from her father that she never dealt with, that she just went to church and sang praises to Jesus and never really had the tools to deal with the fact that, okay, here it is. I never felt love as a child. I'm in a marriage where I don't feel love, and I have these kids that I don't know how to love. Okay? So that's one thing that's playing out. So whenever I had a sickle cell crisis, I felt love. My mom came, she stopped what she was doing. She didn't talk to me like I was unwanted anymore. She wiped my brow because I'm sweating, and I actually felt love. So no matter how painful these crises were, the payoff of feeling love was worth it. Between 4 and 12, my mom was always there. When I went into the hospital, my dad never visited. And my dad would say stuff like, well, you know, if something happened, there's money here to bury him. So I knew that my dad didn't care. So at age 12, my mom left Jamaica and went to the United States, hoping to find a better life for her kids. So between 12 and 15, those 3 years, she was gone. I was living with my dad. Wasn't any payoff in getting sick, so, you know, let's keep it healthy. So I never got sick. I came to America at age 15. Now I'm this teenager that's really in that rebel mode where I don't need your love. You know what I'm saying? You never did love me anyway, so I don't need your love. So between 15 and 18, when I'm under their roof, no need to get sick. At 19, I'm working a full-time job from midnight to 8, and I'm going to college from 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. My body needed a break. So having a crisis was a logical thing to do in order to get the rest and to recuperate. So I'm looking at all these subtle ways that unhealed trauma shows up in your life and really run different aspects of your life. Like you said, you made a conscious decision not to be your father.
Right.
I did the same thing as well.
Right.
And Steve did the same thing as well.
I did the same thing.
Yeah, we all looked at the negative example that our parents had, and we, as a child, decided we would be better. But in that extreme decision to be better, there were other loopholes that we missed.
Right.
Yeah.
And that create damage someplace else down the line.
Yeah.
So the takeaway here is we have to be self-aware. We have to examine. When something happens in your life and it keeps recurring,
Right.
you can't just blame the other people in your life. You have to find a way to say, well, you know, I'm the constant variable in this. What is it that I'm bringing to the table to keep this scenario keep replaying?
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing that, you know, that I find interesting about whenever we do have areas of self-awareness and self-reflection, we have to be as diligent about unpacking and really exploring our own faults and our own patterns and habits and whatnot. Because what will happen is we can identify what we do, but we don't really put a valuation on the impact. So like, yeah, I do that.
That's true.
But, you know,
That's true. Absolutely.
but when so and so does such and such, it means A, B, C, D, E. When we do something, it's like, yeah, it did that. But we're not talking about A, B, C, D, E. You know what I mean? So we have to be very mindful of that. Like the impact that we're not only having on the other people,
Absolutely.
but the impact that that habit is having on our life and the way
Right.
things are playing out.
Right. Because again, just to piggyback off what you're saying, the way unhealed trauma shows up, we tend to operate from a place where we will do more to avoid pain than we'll ever do to gain pleasure. So we play this life defensively.
Yeah.
And we walk out
Yeah.
into the world defensively, and a lot of times from our unconscious behavior, we hurt a lot of people. And the people that we hurt, we're unaware. And there's a saying that says, the axe forgets, but the tree remembers. So in trying to heal the trauma with my family, when I bring to the table and say, okay, Mommy, here's what you did. She never remembers because in that scenario, she's an axe, right? But I remember clearly because I'm the tree.
Right.
But then I might have said something to her where now I'm the axe and I don't remember even saying anything like that. So when we're looking to heal unhealed trauma, we have to all realize that at some point you were both the axe and the tree. And even if you don't remember, doesn't necessarily mean that it didn't happen.
Right.
Especially if the person who's speaking to you, you don't know that person to be alive.
Yeah.
So these are other blind sides that we have that a lot of times it's painful to look at because no one wants to think of themselves as being a person who's insensitive and inconsiderate and lacking compassion. But sometimes just out of the trauma that we have, we behave in such a way because we're just being defensive.
Yeah. It reminds me of a conversation Steve and I had the other day. We were talking about how the conversation had to do with like the zodiac and you know how we were talking about not just whether or not it's accurate, but just what happens when you put people in a category.
Right.
So you see everybody who applies,
Right.
born under these between these dates. You see the characteristics and the traits, and you identify them so quickly because you've already mentally put them in that category.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the question then becomes like, whenever something happens, when what happened with your mom and your sister in that conversation, that created a lens of
Right.
women. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And
Oh, yeah,
everybody
yeah, yeah,
now, it all applies, like all women, this lens applies. You know what I mean? What happens in all of our lives and experiences, like we create lenses, and then we see everybody through that lens, and we believe that we're being objective. We believe that we're looking at what's in front of us with a clear view, and we never are.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting you said. I think in this case, though, because of who it's from, that lens was just so much stronger. Like, if one of his sisters said it, it would have been like, yeah, whatever, but his mother said it. Like, as a young boy, your mom is like the epitome of a woman. I'm using, you know what I mean? You want your mom to be perfect. You don't want nobody, you know what I'm saying? So this woman that birthed you and that you've known all your life, she is going to be the example of how you're potentially going to see the women in your life.
Right.
You know what I mean? She's this cornerstone of that. So if you're like, I was fortunate enough where like I had a mom that was like always sacrificed. She was always there. And like same thing with like we left Jamaica, but you know we had a different situation. Like the father didn't come with us. We had to leave that situation, right? And you know there was a lot of sacrifices. My mom was working 2-3 jobs, but she was always there for us. You know what I mean? We went to bed, she was there. Woke up, she was there. You know what I mean? But if I had a mom who had me when she was 18, right, and then she's dropped me off to grandma, you know, every 5 minutes because she want to go out to the clubs, and every 3 days or 4 days I meet a new uncle, and she's the only child, and then when you get older, you realize, wait a minute.
Right.
Mommy ain't had no brothers?
Right.
Like, oh, you realize when you get to be 17, 18, and you out there in the world doing your thing, oh, my mom was just like, just sleep with all these dudes. Now you have a totally different view of women now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So all those things is an accumulation of your what you've seen, who you've seen it from. You know what I mean? Because man, that is like a potent. That's like what do you call it when something is like a concentrated version of information when it comes from your mother. When your mother says something, it's like what?
For sure.
Like, man, like yeah, man, that's.
But then we also have the habit of like whenever we see a trait, we see a characteristic of someone, we chalk up everything else. So like, you know, somebody says something that reminds you of your ex or your mom or your dad or whatever, you start applying other characteristics from your ex, your mom, your dad on that person just because of that one thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right,
said a phrase
absolutely, right.
that your mom used to say or your dad used to say or your whoever used to say. You know what I mean? They said something, they moved a certain way. You know what I mean? They have a certain interest, and it's like, oh, if you like that, you must also like this, and this.
Right.
And it's like that's not true, and it's more of a reflection of you.
Without a doubt.
And how you are viewing the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
You said something that kind of blew my mind because I think we talked about a lot of stuff. Well, you said that because you said something that I made a conscious decision of also. I made a conscious decision not to be like my father.
Right.
Because he wouldn't consider himself an alcoholic because he don't.
Yeah,
right. Because he don't lay in the gutter and dogs are pissing on him, waking up. So he's not an alcoholic, right? So, but you said you unconsciously
decided that I wasn't going to be my mom.
No, but you became your mom, or you said you unconsciously decided that you weren't going to be your mom.
Unconsciously, yeah.
Yeah, I had to. That kind of. Whoa.
Yeah.
Like you made me think. I'm like, okay, what did I? Like I know I consciously did, but what did you unconsciously do?
Yep.
Or
did you see your mom as a victim and you decide you were not going to be a victim? Is that what you were saying? Like
yeah,
I'm not going to go through here and go through a bunch of foolishness.
Right.
The minute I see it, I'm going to.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Okay. That's what I took away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was very conscious not to be the man that made a woman feel that way.
Right. But you also.
That's my.
What I can't speak for you, but what I also did was made the conscious decision not to be made to feel that way by someone. I don't have a tolerance for that.
That's interesting.
I won't be that, and I won't tolerate it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think that is interesting. So, we're gonna go deep right now. So, I said, like, people always ask, because I have a different view of marriage now, being I've been married for 20 years than I did when I started.
Of course.
Right? It's a totally different. So, my thing was, I always wanted to be the type of husband I wish my mother had married.
Right.
So that's a very strong thing,
Yeah.
and I think that commitment has kept me. Right on the path, not who I'm married to.
Right.
Because people, and I remember one time, like I always felt I was more committed to the commitment than I am to the person. Because people can make you sway.
Yes.
You know, you do two or three things, and you're like, you know what?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, but I was always a more, like I said, my boy DB told me this one time, Steve, you can't unfuck something.
Right.
Once it's fucked, it's fucked.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I always make sure that I look past the initial.
Right.
So, man, it's a lot of processing right now.
Yeah.
It's a lot of processing right now. So with that, like, I know now, like, there was a time in my past where I felt when I'm getting flack, I'm like, okay, maybe I deserve this. You know, maybe it's a generational karma thing.
Wow.
Yeah. I read. Okay, I'll roll with this.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. I'll roll with that. But after a while, I'm like, no, I don't deserve this. Like, I do not deserve this. That's his shit. Like, that's his stuff. He's got to deal with that. I'm not taking this on. But there is actually a part of my state of mind that says, okay, I'll deal with this because my mom had to deal with some shit, and just as a male figure, yeah, I can handle this. If this woman wants to unload some stuff on me, all right, I'll take it. I'll take a generation.
Okay.
I'll take it from the first generation, but.
Take one for the team.
Take one for the generation.
Yeah, but you can't take too much before you become punch drunk. And I'm like, all right, enough now.
Right.
Like now I'm at the stage, I'm like, all right, enough of that.
Yeah.
Stop that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But the problem is, what was going on throughout that, where you were like just taking the hits, created a precedent, created a pattern.
Yes.
Created
Yeah.
It created the idea that you're receptive to these hits, so now let's
Absolutely.
unload on you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What Starski said, again, resonated with me because he said, I decided I was not going to be a victim. And I remember I was speaking to my sister who was in a marriage that she wasn't happy for a very long time. And she was asking me about a relationship that I had, and I said to her, oh yeah, I left that. And she said to me, oh, you took the easy way out. And I said to her, you said like it's a bad thing. Like, you're supposed to be there and suffer for 20 years, and then you paid your dues, now you're worthy of leaving. Like, no, it's like I know what I like and I know what I don't like. And this disrespect doesn't feel good. And I know, again, I have certain rules that I live by, being that I'm working and being aware of different trauma. So one thing is I go where I'm celebrated, not where I'm tolerated. So a lot of times you're in a relationship and it's all good in the beginning, but after everyone gets comfortable, we start taking each other for granted.
Oh
I'm not with that. And the
I
whole
agree with you on that.
attempting to heal, it's a very difficult conversation because even if you're willing to heal, your partner might not be willing to look at what it's going to take to heal.
Absolutely.
Or the other people in your environment, they might not want to look at it. And there's a quote that I heard that resonates. It says, when you avoid difficult conversations, which is what it takes to heal, you trade short-term discomfort for long-term dysfunction. And that's what we've done in my family. We've traded a lot of short-term discomfort. I don't want to have this conversation. I don't want to revisit the fact that I said something to you, you're my child, and I don't want to revisit that. So we traded a long-term dysfunction where we act like all is well when all wasn't well. And now here we are at a point, my mother is in her 70s right now, and the reason I'm here in New Jersey is because the whole unhealed trauma came crashing down up on the family. And we now in our late 40s and 50s and 70s have to sit at the table and look at what we refused to look at for the past 40, 50 years and unwrap that and take responsibility, each of us, for being at some point the axe and the tree. And I can tell you it wasn't an easy conversation, but at the end of the day, it was worth it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yo, I want to thank the both of y'all because in this moment, I realized what I became. What was that thing? What I unintentionally. I think I allowed myself to be the dude that got like a woman could stand up to and not fear repercussions. So in a way, I kind of unconsciously became the guy that wasn't threatening to a woman that my father was to my mother. So she had the space in the room to say what she wanted to say with no threats. Right? But in real life, I'm not that guy, but I played that role because in that microcosm of a relationship, I wanted her to know that, yo, dog, you ain't gotta worry about shit over here. It's cool.
Right, say your piece.
But then when you do that, no one stops. And no one goes, you know what? Yeah, I think I kicked you in the head long enough. You know, you got a headache? No one does that because they're not the axe.
Right, exactly.
I mean, they're not the tree.
Right.
They're the axe.
Right.
And
Interesting.
We have this way of, even when we're looking through our own, mess, our own stuff, and then we're reflecting on our parents and what was going on there, we also have to acknowledge that our parents adopted some things from their parents.
Absolutely.
The problem is they're too far removed for us to really work it all out So it's like somebody has to stop and say, all right, well, in this moment, in this presence, like this present day, I'm going to work out this, and this, and I'm going to communicate down to my children what's going on. Because that's the other thing that generally happens.
Right.
Like our parents aren't telling us what they realize about themselves. You know what I mean? There are moments of self-awareness and self-reflection and what they had done wrong all along.
And from their generation, that's not a child's place.
Right. Specifically, yeah.
They didn't have time for that. They was too busy trying to just survive and just...
No, what I mean by it's not a child's place. From their generation, you as a child doesn't need to know what's in your head.
Right, yeah.
Sit down and shut,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
Man.
I kind of feel we need some of that.
And
we need some of that in this generation.
Going back to the whole childhood thing and just how we really didn't want to be a parent. Like when I was growing up, if you said to me, well, Kirk, who loves you? I'm going to say Jesus because that's what I sung in Sunday school. Jesus loved me, this I know. But if you say, okay, take Jesus out of the picture, who else? I'll be hard pressed to pull a name. It would not cross my mind to say my mom or my dad. So when I had my son, I remember he would be 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old. And 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, I will wake him up. Javon, who loves you? And you, Daddy, who else? My mommy, who else? My grandma. It was important to me that even when he's unconscious, he knew that he was loved. So it's these little things that happen that it molds your life to, for someone else, it's not really important, but for you, it's the world, it's a big deal. And I just found for myself, as I took the time to go in and heal the different layers of trauma, my life overall became more beautiful. My interaction with people became more honest. The mask that I walk around with was no longer necessary. It's either you take me as I am or you leave me as I am. You understand?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So when I see unhealed trauma and pain, I recognize it immediately. Like I'm in a relationship and the young lady's arguing with me and I'm saying, you're not arguing with me, you're arguing with your ex. Because what you're talking about, I don't bring any of that to the table.
Yeah.
You understand? But because that trauma is unhealed, she's coming to this relationship defensively to make sure Kirk don't do to her what was done to her before. I'm like, baby, that's not what I bring to the table. I know I bring some crap to the table, but that's not it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know, the funny thing is, you know, there's a saying, I don't know if I'm going off course here, but what you said about the relationship, your girl and everything, there's a saying that says happy life, happy wife, happy life.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
Happy us. It's not just one partner, you know?
That's bullshit.
Happy wife,
because,
happy life.
Because you're not responsible for someone else's happiness.
You can't?
You can't be.
Yeah.
They're responsible for their own happiness.
Yeah, somebody said that we were at the house last night. Somebody was like, Starski, I know you're happy because you got Viv. And I'm like, no, I got Viv because I'm happy.
Absolutely.
Right.
I got on.
And when you said that, the profundity of that statement went over their head. They
because it seemed cocky.
Yeah.
It seemed cocky.
Right.
I knew exactly what you meant because at the same, there was a time in my life I was single, but I was walking around happy, and because I was so happy, I met someone who reflected exactly. So I knew exactly what you meant. Yeah. Why is that so hilarious?
No, it's not. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you, my brother. I'm not laughing at you. No, he said you walk around happy.
Yeah.
And then when you got somebody, you know, all of a sudden, I didn't walk around happy anymore. That's what I was laughing at.
Initially, when I met her, I was happy. She was happy. We were happy. But
the funny thing is, it's all the unnecessary rules that happens in relationships that's just not about rules, but it's just about protecting your own insecurities.
Right.
You know, like I always say, a relationship is a faith-based thing like religion. If you don't believe in the person you're with, why are you with them?
Right.
Like I said, I'm not going to be in a car, sinking down the car, watching where, I'm not going through nobody's phone. I'm not doing none of that stuff. If my wife says she's out on Route 46 doing jumping jacks, that's what I believe she's doing. Because when I say I'm someplace, that's where I'm at. Period.
Right.
The problem is, if you can't trust, you can't be trusted. Period. That's it. I have these conversations with my friends all the time, and I'm like, yo, well, dude, you're with the dude.
Yeah, but
You're with the dude.
We're hypocritical people, man.
We are. We
Hypocritical
are.
Creatures.
We are.
To that point, like if you can't trust, you can't be trusted. You know, people.
I believe in that
people
100%.
rationalize in their own mind.
Oh yeah.
The crime for their own good, but for the other person's judgment.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's a reason why
Absolutely.
this makes sense if I do it, but if the other person doesn't,
Right.
they
Right.
deserve to be locked up.
Most people are not even introspective enough to know that they have two different scales
Right.
that they're weighing the exact same situation with.
Right.
You know, most people, they don't see themselves. A lot of times there's a quote that says, you can't see the picture if you're in the frame.
Right.
Absolutely.
So in order
Yeah.
to see that picture, you have to be very aware, self-aware, and very introspective. And most people, again, they're not willing to look at that. They will tell you, this is what she did to me, this is what he did to me, and they're projecting out. They're the victim. They never look to see, well, you're the constant variable in that equation. How does your role show up in what's being done?
Right. And then when you look at the pathologies and you look at what's the traumas that we experience as children and what's going on in our lives that's playing out into our adulthood, a lot of time it'll be the case that we are the same criminal that our
We're
parents were.
accusing,
that
Yeah,
our
yeah,
parents
yeah.
used to be.
Absolutely.
We just we know our intention. So we justify it through that lens.
Right.
It's like, yeah, I might be doing the same thing, but the reason why I'm doing it is because of this, and so
Right.
it's not the same.
Right.
Right.
All right, well, fine, and now you're satisfied, but the scenario is still what it is.
That
'cause you're happy,
amazed
you
me
walk
the
away with
first
it.
time I realized that.
Yeah.
What you're saying, that blew my mind. And when, again, going back into the past, when my mom met my dad and they were together, my dad's side of the family believed that he was too good for my mother.
Okay.
So she suffered a lot based on the different family traumas and everybody. She felt like they were against her, right? We came here to the United States, and there's a Caribbean mentality. Blacks from the Caribbean believe that they're better than Black Americans. We work harder, we're better, we're more ambitious, they're on welfare, all these stereotypes that's given to us. So when I showed up and told my mom, such and such is pregnant, we're about to have a baby. My mom didn't like that because in her mind, we're Jamaicans, we're better than her, she's Black American. And my mom said to me in her unhealed trauma, well, you're a man, nobody has to know. And that blew my mind. I said to Mommy, how could you say something like that? And then I expressed to her, when you were growing up, my dad's side of the family was violently against you because they thought they were better than you. Now you're telling me I'm better than her?
Right.
And my mom said to me, yeah, that's a different time though.
Right.
I'm like, you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
There's no logic to it, but it blew my mind because I figured if you suffer some injustice, you want to protect the world from that injustice, not perpetrate that injustice on someone else.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the justification is different.
Absolutely.
When
When it's self-serving.
I feel like I owe y'all an invoice. Damn, I don't learn. I feel like I gotta pay a price for this little because I discovered something about myself today. I was like, oh shit. Yeah, just in this conversation, like that wasn't when you said that, I was like, what the hell? Was your father alcoholic?
No.
Okay, like because mine was. So when you said that, it really like hit me. I'm like, okay. I'm like, whoa.
Right.
And I think we talk all the time, and we talk all the time. I think I'm an introspective dude, but like I never thought of that. Like, what did I like? Whoa.
Right.
And then I'm running through my head as we talk, and I'm like, and you're saying something else that like, I'm like, yo, oh shit, oh wow, okay.
Well,
My goodness.
If we're going to wrap up for the audience, we want to at least leave them with something.
Let's do it.
So.
Yes, sir.
What I've found, like I said before, what I've found is just being introspective. If something's happened in your life, again, go back to that Dr. Phil idea. If it's recurring in your life, what's the emotional payoff? Why are you keep doing this over and over? Why is it that you keep attracting the same relationships over and over? And a lot of times we work on different areas because we're aware that this area needs work, but we never see the blind spot. Like for me, I'll work on the area. I wanted to be a good person, Starski. I didn't want to be the asshole, that somebody dated. I wanted to be a good person. So every relationship, and it doesn't have to be an intimate relationship, even a relationship that we have, I'm always aware of how what I'm being and who I'm being in that moment. And being aware, again, going back to Carl Jung, if you don't make the unconscious conscious, it will run your life and you'll call it fate. So if your life is moving in a certain direction, you want to ask yourself, well, what is it that's going on with me? What are the thoughts that I'm thinking? What is it that I keep doing? Am I playing to win or am I playing defensively? Am I acting out of love? Am I acting out of fear? And as you become more introspective, you don't have to talk to anybody. Talk to yourself about it. You will find that life begins, or at least I've found life begins to open up to you. And the quality of your relationships, all aspect of relationship, just become more enriched, better, more honest, more open, more loving, more flowing. And your life, the quality of your life is always going to be in proportion to the quality of your relationships. You don't live in a bubble, you don't live by yourself. So that's just something for me that's very important, where I have to always, because my relationships pretty much reflects to me what I'm thinking, what I'm believing, what I'm doing, what I'm saying. So they're like checks and balances for me when I look at relationship. And I'm not just talking intimate relationship, I'm talking about everybody.
Across the board.
Yeah, exactly, across the board.
And it reflects the person you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I look in that a lot, and I'm going to make a plug. I wrote my book. It's called From Depression to Destiny. And pretty much I wrote the book From Depression to Destiny. The reason why I wrote it is depression, when I say from depression to destiny, not depression as in you're depressed and you're sad, but depression in my mind is the lowest point you could be. And destiny is where you belong. So how do you get from the lowest point to where you belong? And it's all about coming to terms with unhealed trauma and being aware of unhealed trauma and setting intentions for your life. Like Steve, when you got married, one of the intentions that you set was you're going to be a good husband regardless of what comes down the pike, based on what your definition of a good husband is.
Yes.
And because of that intention, most people go through life and they don't set intention. They just walk through and whatever arrives, they deal with it. But when you set the intention and realize that, okay, based on the intention that I set, this doesn't belong. And this gotta go.
Yes.
Most people don't do that. So the whole From Depression to Destiny is about really looking at that and finding a way to walk through your mess and getting a message out of that mess.
And how can they get this book?
KirkNugent.com. If you're buying in the United States, I would prefer you buy it from me. I can autograph it and send it to you. So just go to my website, KirkNugent.com.
Beautiful.
If you're outside the United States and the shipping and all of that, go to Amazon.com and you could get it.
Oh, life ain't a ding dong. If I could take you up in boom boom boom.